a beautiful case, and the final highlight from our Joy in the City live event. All that coming up now on Joy in the City, True Stories. Joy in the City is a program highlighting people and organizations having an impact on our city. Too often, we hear about the problems and dysfunction in our culture. But we are coming with a different approach as we take a look at the good things that are going on right here in our community. I'm Lindsay Irvin, and you're about to see what God is doing in our city. We want to thank our program sponsors, Park Home, for the donation of furniture used in our studio, and our platinum sponsor, Harry's Construction, for their ongoing support of Joy in the City. Our first story was originally utilized for our Christmas Day production, but this story is so inspiring, we want to bring it to you, our True Stories audience. Take a few moments to hear about this heart-wrenching yet heartwarming story called A Beautiful Case.
What Christmas means to us has changed through the years. It changed the most about 10 years ago when our son was born, just 4 days prior to Christmas. He didn't have a great prognosis before birth, and after birth, he was immediately life-flighted to Children's. I delivered about 2.5 hours away from home. I just remember those days being really hard, mentally, physically, emotionally. We were exhausted. Our daughters were young, just 22 months, 5 and 6 years old. They were old enough to understand. They knew that something was very different, but they didn't really know what. The day before Christmas Eve, I was discharged and finally able to be with my baby. Dan took me to Children's and dropped me off. He came back to town to get the girls and the little bit of Christmas that we had. It was really hard to prepare for Christmas while we were dealing with such a high-risk pregnancy. A lot of our time and energy was put into doctor's appointments and sonograms and non-stress tests, and really just the mental and emotional drain of that. We just weren't ready. But when Dan got to the house, the porch had garbage bags and boxes with gifts for the girls. People knew already that we needed them before we even knew. Dan brought the girls back and we rented a Ronald McDonald house. We did the very best that we could to make Christmas normal. It was anything but. It really showed us what Christmas was about: giving, caring, hope. One of the nurses told us that there's a family that sponsors Christmas Eve dinner for everybody in the NICU Christmas Eve night. We have never met this family, and I doubt we ever will. That night, when everybody else was having their normal family traditions, we were so far away from our extended family, we celebrated Christmas Eve in the cafeteria with pizza and beef sticks and fountain drinks. I remember the transition being hard, but then when we saw how much people loved us and how many people reached out, it just showed us that there's so much love and so much kindness in a world that can often look dark. Christmas morning, the girls woke up and we had a little tree sat on the little table in the Ronald McDonald house. We put Christmas presents around and they were really excited. When we took them down that day to see their brother again, I remember my baby, my 22-month-old, looking like a giant. The case was really small due to lack of growth and multiple congenital health issues and anomalies. So he was 2 pounds, 13 ounces, and there was Lainey touching his hand and his little feet. The first time I got to hold him was Christmas Eve. It was 15 minutes for me and 15 minutes for Dan. And then he had to be back in his incubator to regulate his temperature and all of those things. But Christmas morning when we were all together in that tiny NICU room where the beeps sounded really loud and you could hear babies crying and moms crying, and it was just like, it was a pretty hectic place to be. The doctors came in and told us that the birth defect in his heart, they had found it multiple times, that it was gone. They couldn't find it anymore. He was supposed to have surgery that day, but he was so tiny that it was pretty risky. And I remember I was so excited that I told strangers in the waiting room They didn't speak English, but I didn't care because I wanted them to know about our Christmas miracle. Those NICU days were hard and exhausting. They were chaotic and they involved a lot of separation. I stayed at the hospital while Dan took care of the girls and maintained a job and college classes. Heck, the last 10 years were hard. It's nothing we ever signed up for, it's nothing anybody can train you for, and it can be really tough. Once we finally got home, we started to adjust to a new normal. Life as we knew it was kind of flipped upside down, but we had no other choice. Case was 4 pounds 1 ounce when we brought him home at around 5 or 6 weeks of age. And we were just trying to get used to things, just trying to figure out how to create the most normal environment for our kids that we could. We were thrown into this crazy world of special needs families. We made friends we never thought we would make. It's really been an incredible thing to see different families raising kids with different abilities, and yet they're happy. Even though this can be hard and challenging at times, you can still choose joy even on the hardest days. We were so excited when we started connecting with other families and just started to see how much people really appreciated and grew from Case's story that we started a Facebook page when he was about 2 years old. And it was really incredible to see how that affected people from all over the world. People would get on after a bad day or a bad doctor's appointment or sitting in traffic, and they would get on the page and write us messages telling us that Case really puts life into perspective. He puts problems into perspective. He has fought some really tough battles, and he has shown people that you can fight these tough battles and you can overcome them with a smile. For us, Christmas will never be the same. We always want to try and find someone to give hope to. It's important that people know that they are loved and that there is something to be hopeful and joyful about every day of the year, but especially on Christmas.
Let me encourage you to follow this family on social media by visiting their channel listed below. If you know of a person or organization impacting our city, we want to hear about it. So you can contact us at 814-944-1948 or by email at stories@joyinthecity.org.
Today's Platinum sponsor is Harry's Construction, whose motto is, "If you can dream it, we can create it." Recently opening Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center so you, the consumer, can see examples of the variety of services provided by the team at Harry's Construction. Regardless of the project size, Harry's team approaches each project as if it is his own home. Be sure to visit Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center at 114 Main Street in Bellwood. You can also visit their website to see pictures of home improvement projects over the years. Thanks again to Harry Halk and the team for supporting Joy in the City.
In our most recent Joy in the City live event, we spoke with a local woman who has taken a hobby and made it into a full-fledged ministry that blesses many weekly. Enjoy this inspiring story on realizing your dream.
All right, our next segment here we have with us Cathy Manning. Now, Cathy is going to be wandering all around the place tonight because she is our photographer for the evening, and that actually is what I want to talk to you about. So, Cathy, talk to me a little bit about the journey that kind of started as a hobby.
Well, to be honest with you, as I tell a lot of people, this is all your fault. The short backstory is about February of last year, you had come to me and said, hey, want to bump up the social media stuff with the church, all of that. So I got on board with that and started taking pictures just with my iPhone during Sunday service. And the longer it went, and when I would go through the pictures at the end of the, not the end of the day, the afternoon or whatever, I started to see things a little bit differently that what we were doing with taking pictures, putting them online, and all of that was actually turning into like a witness for people that, you know, might not know what goes on in a church. Because if people share them, like them, whatever, it's a testimony for, because we have people that get prayed over. We've got people that get delivered and healed and all of that. So it's a testimony. And it's also, if people are sharing this content and putting it out there, it's a mission field as well. So I started approaching it from like that perspective. And I forget at what point you had said to me, you know, have you thought about getting like a real camera? So, and I have always taken pictures, like too many pictures, but I've never done anything with it. Never thought about it, never whatever. So Jamie Miller, actually, who's sitting out here, I saw her, said, hey, I'm going to sell my old Canon. Do you want it? And I was like, absolutely. And that's kind of what started it. And just taking the pictures on a Sunday morning. And then you actually said to me, hey, you got an eye for this. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. I figure if he knows, then, you know, we'll go with it. So that's where we're at today.
Indeed. Now, just so you know, those of you that have an interest in doing something like this, you can, even with an iPhone or a mobile phone, probably not a flip phone, but a mobile phone, you could actually start taking pictures and video and really get a grasp on a craft. And that was even in pictures of her iPhone. I told her, you have an eye for this. And you can kind of see that, and encouraged her to do that. Now, so it started as a little bit of a hobby, a little bit helping with the church. Since that time, things have changed a little bit for you and your journey. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I've got, you know, I'm always driving my kids crazy with taking pictures, and I'll admit they're awful at it. I'll ask them to smile, and I get like, you know, they're 5, and the other one will be 3. I get like fingers up the nose, and, you know, they're looking around and doing all of that. So I figured, you know, hey, you know, single income, let's see if we can, you know, maybe just see if I can bring some extra money in by taking some pictures of, you know, other people's kids. And I took pictures of my aunt's dogs the other day, and, you know, it's a thing. So I love it. And it wasn't ever anything on my radar. And it fell in my lap, and I love it.
So you have started a small photography business called Faith Photography.
Yes.
Tell us why that name, what it's about.
I actually, and I know she's here too, I'm actually going to give Heather Carruthers credit for that, because when I started feeling this whole thing out, just because the culture here in our church is very encouraging, and I had so many people on a Sunday morning like, hey, really appreciate what you do. We think you do a good job. You know, love seeing the pictures. You know, we get messages. You know, hey, you know, I wasn't there today. Thank you for putting these up. So that kind of thing. So I started like feeling this out, and I'm like, okay, I got my start in a church situation, sanctuary situation, that kind of thing. So I was asking people, where do I go? Like, what do I call this? Whatever. And Heather and I were on a conversation the one day on a text message, and she actually said, you know, well, your faith shoots. And I was like, that's it. And it just like, that was it. Nothing felt right until she sent that text that said, you know, your faith shoots. And I'm like, that's it.
So Cathy has started a business called Faith Photography, and in the program that you have tonight, there's an ad for her, and I would encourage every single one of you to call her this week about setting up a Christmas session. But this is something that she does for the church, and we are so blessed. As a matter of fact, Sunday afternoon, around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we start getting texts. They're going to be in the pictures today. And anybody who does anything with social media, every time somebody likes a picture, you get notified as an administrator. And we have now called Sunday Notification Sunday, because we get 40 and 50, 60 notifications. Because some of you, that you don't just like the group of pictures, some of you go and like every single picture. And every one of them notifies us, which we appreciate, and we love that.
And that's just it. It's not like, you know, a dozen pictures. I tend to overshoot everything, and I'll put up an album that's 50, 55, 60 pictures.
Every good photographer overshoots.
Yes,
That's a good thing.
I way overshoot, but that's all right.
So she's a blessing to us as the church, and she's also someone who just kind of started on this journey, and I've called this segment Realizing Your Dream, because sometimes if you just start with a hobby, you may never realize this is something that you love doing, and you could actually make a business out of it. Some people, you don't always need to invest in thousands of dollars and get lots of capital to open up a business. It can just be something that supplements your income at home, and in time grow to the point that it could be a full-time job. And Cathy does a great job. And I want to pull her in because she has grown so quickly from the point of asking her, will you take a few pictures for social media for the church, to in less than a year, she's taking sessions and Christmas and all kind of stuff for people. It's a great thing. So some of you, I'm sure, as you're thinking tonight, well, I have a hobby that I kind of enjoy, and I have this, I have that. Just think of some things that you could do and realize that that dream actually could be something that's beneficial, not just to you and your family, but something could bless others and maybe even make a little bit of money on it. Amen?
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Cathy.
Can I say one thing real quick, and
Sure.
I'll make it short? I could not do any of this without the support of my husband, because when I'm in here on Sunday mornings running around doing it, he's got both of our kids. Our 3-year-old is a little bit of a pill, so there's a lot of times he's still hanging out with nursery and her, or if I'm, in the afternoons now, hey, I've got a photo shoot here, I've got a this, I've got a that. So he's got my back in this, and I couldn't even do the church stuff without him. So I love you, babe. Thank you.
Indeed.
Often in our community, we see pastors and faith leaders from a distance. We see them on stage or recently in front of a camera, but we don't always know their backstory. Today, we're going to take a few moments to get to know one of the faith leaders in our city.
Pastor Steve, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a pastor, why you became a pastor.
All right, well, I wasn't always saved. It wasn't up to about 10 years ago until I gave my heart to the Lord. Before then, I was a wild child. I liked to drink, liked to party, liked to chase women. I'd like to do all kinds of stuff where I could have been in trouble. I think the Lord really started working on me in 2001 when I flipped my truck over on its roof whenever I was drunk. And it still took me a couple years to get the swing out, get back into getting to know him a little bit, because he was always tugging at me, but I was always a rebellious spirit where I just wanted, I'll just do it when I get to it. But then finally, about 10 years ago, I just started chasing. Got tired of chasing everything around, got tired of living the life that I was living, and I knew that there was something more out there. So it was just an amazing how God transformed me 10 years ago, from 10 years ago to where I'm at now. And it was neat because a lot of the guys that I work with, because I still serve in the military, so they got to know who I was as the bad Steve, which a lot of them still like to kid me about today. They always ask me, when's bad Steve coming back? I'm like, he's not. He is dead and he is crucified. He is never coming back again.
Indeed.
But it's been neat because the people that I serve with have got to see the transformation in me, what God's done, because not only have I done that, I've also carried some of that as I'm a leader in the military. I use what God's done in my life to help mentor other people, and also use that same kind of care that I have for our church and other believers with the people that I work with and people outside the church. That way they kind of get an idea of who God is and what He's done, what He's been doing in my life. And to let them know that they're not too far from being from approach.
Yeah.
Because He's still a God who can transcend time. He is a God who covers their sins from the east to the west.
Indeed.
And that there's nothing they could ever do that could ever separate to Him. That no matter how bad their life was, that they can still come back to Him. That He'll be willing to accept them in. Because let's face it, we were all prodigal children at one time.
Indeed.
And I was probably one of the worst. But if you'd ask other people, that they always say that they're the worst.
Sure.
And I think some of the better ones that have the strongest testimonies are the ones who could actually say that they walked with Christ the whole entire time without falling into the temptations of this world.
Sure, I got that. Now, so whenever you became a Christian and you got saved, at what point did you feel, okay, now I'm going to take the next step and actually go into the leadership, follow the call, and go into a pastoral ministry?
It was probably about a year after that. I was there looking at college because I wanted to get back into going to college, and I felt the Lord was telling me, I want you to go be in the ministry as a chaplain. So I started finishing up my bachelor's at Liberty University, and then I started enrolled at the Assemblies of God, trying to go into chaplaincy, begin working on my MDiv, because that was my goal, was to be be a chaplain in the military and then see where else God was going to lead me to. And that was whatever I was focusing in on. And then when 2012 came, I started at the Assemblies of God. And then 2 years later, I got rejected as a chaplain candidate because, I don't know, because they said I had too many waivers. I think because back whenever I was wild and woolly, Steve. But then I was ready to give up on the ministry. But then I've talked to one of my old pastor friends and some friends of mine who said, maybe God's not done with you yet. So then I was going to the Claysburg Church of God, and I was talking with the pastor there, and he was going to try to find a niche for me as far as like being in youth ministry or leadership or wherever. He was going to try to find where I fit in at. So it came all of a sudden, and then I became a member of that church, and then started working on my credentials with the Church of God out of Cleveland, Tennessee. I had already gotten ordained through Trinity Full Gospel Fellowship for the chaplains of the Full Gospel churches. Because that was the quickest way for me to get an ecclesiastical endorsement so I could go into the chaplaincy in the military. But after that all fell through, I was like, well, I was discouraged. Wanted to just give up with it and just say the heck with it all. But there was something that kept telling me the Lord was saying, I'm not done with you yet. And then 3 years ago, after I got done taking a break from school, because I told my wife, I said, I'm tired of school. I'm tired of writing essays. I'm tired of doing this. And I'm tired of being up all night working on it. And so I said, let's take a break. And then a couple weeks later, I was asked by our state overseer if I was interested in becoming the pastor of Altoona Restoration Church of God. And I was like, let me pray about it, because I'd got done doing a devotional in Joshua, and it was whenever they were walking around the city for 6 days, and on the seventh day the walls fell. Well, my wife had also done a devotional in Joshua that morning too, and we just decided we were just going to sit down and pray about it and talk about it, see how leading the church would fit into our schedules, and if our marriage was strong enough with it because of all the craziness that we have, because we have a busy schedule. But we're like, yeah, you know what, we're going to do it. So I called him back and I said, let's go ahead and we'll accept the position. So I called my state overseer back and said, we will accept the church. And at that time, the church was I think we only had 10 people because everybody else in the church left. So we were basically starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. But we were believing God's going to do some great things, and we believe God's still going to do some great things.
One of the reasons I pulled you in as our first person to do this is a story recently. So give us some background of this story before we get into the testimony. Give us a little bit of background on what happened recently.
Well, with our church, we are a small church, and we have electrical heat, so that kind of like cuts down on what we can do as far as the wintertime. That's our busy, most expensive time of the year. Also, the second January I was there, we had, whenever it was like really bitter cold out, we had the water pipes bust in our church, so we actually had to do a lot of extensive repairs. The insurance covered a lot of it, but it didn't cover enough of what we needed to, so we kind of had to use some of what we had saved up. And then also, being that it was wintertime, our light bills are extremely high because we have electrical heat. And with the small number we have in our congregation, the winter months are the times where it's hard for us to pay the bills. We pay them, but it dwindles what we can do as far as like other ministries that we want to get into, the things that we want to do that we can reach out into our community, outreach stuff, because we have to keep everything we have to pay for the winter months.
So we had, at the beginning of January, we had an after Christmas pastors gathering that you hosted. Mm-hmm. Even in spite of all these challenges that you were dealing with your church, you guys were generous enough to host that. Mm-hmm. During that time, your wife expressed some concerns about the future, at least in the winter, mm-hmm. of the church. And whenever she mentioned that looking to possibly close down for the winter because of the extreme heating costs and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Granted, it's an older building, so it's probably a little more expensive. It's not efficient, I would assume. Right. And I believe one of the pastors asked if we could, about how much would it cost to keep things open. And so you guys were doing a spaghetti dinner and mm-hmm. a basket raffle and different things to fundraise to help out with that. And what was the cost that you guys were hoping if that would have been able to stay open with no issues? What was the cost that you were looking at?
We were actually looking at the cost about $6,000 is what our normal expenses are in the wintertime. Okay. And our congregation gives everything they can. Sure. And when they have extra, they give extra.
Yeah. So now we've seen some pictures and some video from that day, and you were hoping that you were needing about $6,000 to raise. But with a spaghetti dinner and type of fundraiser, what were you hoping that you would get out of that day?
I'm the ultimate pessimist. So I'm like, if we can get 2 to 3, I'm happy.
$2,000 to $3,000.
Yes, because that would get us through at least through this part of the winter.
So talk to me a little bit about that day. What did you see God do?
It was amazing because just seeing how everybody was coming together and how people were donating and how people were giving gift baskets right and left, and I was overwhelmed because I'm just sitting there like, wow, God is doing some amazing things, and I'm waiting to see what God's going to do next, and then just to see everybody coming in there lined up for over 2 hours, just coming in there and getting food and spaghetti, and I'm just like, wow, and then donating to the baskets and getting somebody donated a TV, somebody donated a lot of other things. We're just like sitting there like, wow, God is doing something special here. God is great, and we're just excited, and we were overwhelmed because we were expecting maybe 100 people coming in. We had originally set up for 100 people right there, and then we were going to start making more. But the influx of people that came in there all of a sudden, we were just like, wow. Because one guy who was running the kitchen, went and got some more spaghetti sauce, and he wasn't expecting all that. And we were just totally amazed, and just how people were just super friendly and supportive of us. And I mean, I wish I could have been able to share and talk to each and every person, but I didn't get a chance to talk to everybody. I was greeting people at the door, welcoming them in, and I was just super blown away, and I was extremely humble.
You were hoping for between $2,000 and $3,000 in this fundraiser. Can you tell us what you come up with?
We actually came up with, it overshot us by a lot. We had we ended up getting like all over between $9,000 to $10,000.
Wow.
And I was blown. I couldn't believe it. Like I said, we're just sitting there like, wow. And we're just thanking God. We're just thanking God for what he's done, because now we can actually, besides keep our doors open, we can actually do things do things for our community. We can just do other things. We can focus on the repairs that we need to do and little things here and there. But now we can actually have comfort, and now we can actually work on how we can outreach our community, because Juniata is an area where it needs the Holy Spirit. And I just want to see God move in our area. And I just want to do what we can for the kingdom of God, because I'm not going to take any credit for it. If something happens, it's going to be because God's moving.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching Joy in the City True Stories. Let me encourage you to watch other episodes of people and organizations impacting our community at ABC 23 at 5:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. every Sunday. You can also catch us each week on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Until then, be encouraged, because God is moving in our city.